My name's Rob. I'm one of the animators here at White Paper Games, and I'm here with Harry, and we're going to talk about the animation in Dahlia View, our next game. The way that we're approaching the animation in this game is very different from our last game. So with the occupation, all the characters were controlled by an AI-driven system, and this gave them quite a stop-start look. So they would walk to a task, they'd stop, they'd do the task, so they'd be looping in that location, and then they'd end that task, turn around and walk away, and it gave them quite this stop-start look that I wanted to avoid for this next game. You know, we were looking for different avenues and different ways we could enhance the AI system and try and reduce that look so things were a bit more fluid. And it's only when I came to prototype something to say, hey, this is kind of how I want it to look using the sequencer system in Unreal, that we realized, you know, the way that the player interacts with these characters is very scripted, it's very closed environment, so it's very controlled, and we could probably just use sequencer rather than AI to set up the whole animation and have like mini cinematics throughout the whole game. Our last game, The Occupation, in terms of its animation style, it was fairly muted, it wasn't very exaggerated. It was more a game about stealth and hiding from the characters. Whereas with Dahlia View, the whole game is more about the actual characters themselves and observing them and trying to figure out their personalities. So the decision was made to emphasize that with more of an exaggerated and characterful style, which was to kind of draw on their, I suppose, the key personalities or the attributes of the character's personality to better telegraph what type of person that character is and what type of person we want you to think they are. Rather than being so natural and subtle in their movements that it's difficult to distinguish between them. When our artist was developing the art style, he was heavily referencing the animated film The Illusionist, and I think it was like the architecture and the sort of painted art style of the Edinburgh streets that really drew him to it. And when he shared it with the team, there was an element to the animation that I really liked, and it showed that they had different levels of detail to the characters depending on their importance in the scene. We looked at breaking down our characters into sort of different levels of importance. So we have the main cast of characters. These are the ones who you would interact with in the game. You know, you observe their actions, you try and figure them out. They're the main focus of your investigation. And they're the ones you're trying to figure out as people and pick apart their personalities and see if they could have, done this act in Dahlia View. Then you have some other background characters. So we have almost two types of background characters. Ones who exist within the main playable space, but in areas that you don't necessarily access. And they're people who you can observe, but you don't interact with. And then we have sort of a last set of background characters who are outside the world of Dahlia View. So they exist outside the main playable space, and they're there just passing by to give the world a bit more life and make it seem bigger than it is. And so we did a lot of different tests with frame rates and, seeing what suited characters closer up and so this medium distance and further distance away. And we came up with a rule where the more important, or I suppose closer a character is, then the higher their frame rate would be. And the less important they are, then the lower their frame rate would be. And that goes for sort of the mid-ground of the really background characters. And I think from what we have so far, it gives a really cool effect because subconsciously, I think, it says which characters are important and which are there just for flavor, if you like.
In gameplay, animation-wise, there's observations and there's conversations as two separate entities, like core mechanics of the games. And with animation, we wanted to sort of separate these a bit more. For example, for the observations, we kind of think of it more of like a stage play. The way that the characters animate, they're a lot more emphasized. It's important that we watch these characters doing the mundane and going through their daily lives, because that's part of, the interest of sort of just watching people do that. But at the same time, we didn't want it to be boring. We wanted to give it a bit of animation flair. So in the observations, there'll be a lot more bouncy, I suppose. Like I say, more emphasized movements. Whereas when we're in the conversations, because it's a lot more personal, you as the character, Conway, interrogating these people, and it's usually a sort of one-on-one kind of intimate, close conversation. We put a lot more detail into the fidelity of the characters' movements, so you can really analyze and see what they're thinking and how they're acting, and because the cameras are a lot closer up, we get more of a chance to add the smaller things that you might not notice when so far back in the observations. Because even with the observations where you can zoom in multiple levels with your camera, you still, I feel, miss quite a lot of that just because you don't get quite as close up to the characters. Whereas with the camera cuts and things that we have in the conversations, you can get right up in the faces of the characters. You can see like tiny eye darts and just fidgets of the characters when they're uncomfortable and that kind of thing. So we've paid a lot of attention to just how to bring it all together, but also keep them quite separate, to keep it interesting to be going from observation to conversation. When I joined, it was partway through the project, so all the animation styles and things Rob had already explored were pretty solid, but obviously the sort of pipeline for doing that changed quite a lot when I was added to the team, because it wasn't just Rob doing it anymore. It was me, and then later Mario, our freelance animator, that also joined. So working out a good balance on how to sort of portray ideas and sort of talk about what we wanted in the scenes had to change quite a lot. So we often have meetings before going on to animating a scene with me, Rob, and NJ. And in these meetings, we sort of go over, well, what's the intention of the scenes? What do we want the characters to be doing? And where do we want them to be standing? Like, what actions are they doing? We go right to all the details before coming to animate, just so we can get a full understanding of what we want going on in the scene. Also makes it a lot easier to plan cameras and things with that, and like what we need in the environment for them to interact with. If, say, they're making a cup of tea in the conversation, we need to get that down pretty quickly, that we understand that we need to do that, because there's so many different things from all the different departments that will be required to do that. So we'll need the assets for making the cup of tea, for example. We'll need them in the correct place in the like world space, so that's down to design and art to be making and placing those. And then we'll need like design to know what we need in the levels and to be attaching to the characters when they're animating and all that. And obviously for us as animators, we need to know, that the characters will be interacting with these things. Once all that's done, we go and do a blocking pass where, we do very rough animation just to get an understanding of sort of how it's going to be working, how it's going to look before actually polishing it. Now, when doing blocking, reference is key. Animators often say this, and a lot of beginner animators don't realize the importance of reference. Some people consider it as sort of a taboo for no real reason. It's a tool used for improving your animations. You could probably string together the main plot of this game with just the random recordings I have in my phone of me doing just stupid things, getting a reference for this stuff to then animate to. Because it is great. It's a great foundation for doing it. And sometimes it's good for showing before even doing the blocking. Like, I'll film myself doing something and then show it and be like, so like this kind of thing, right? And then once Rob or NJ is like, yeah, that looks good. Or even they'll send me reference showing what they had in their mind specifically. And then I can then go and animate to it.
It seemed fine after I spoke to him.
You trespassed and damaged his property. And don't try to talk your way out of this.
What do you want me to say?
I don't know, to be honest.
What on earth are you doing in my house, Mr. Conway?
Mrs. Doerr.
It's Lady Doerr to you.
We live in polite society, last I checked.
Lady Doerr, of course. Let me explain.
It had better be a bloody good explanation. Go on.
There was an intruder in your house.
I'll say.
What on earth are you doing in my house, Mr. Conway?
Mrs. Doerr.
It's Lady Doerr to you. We live in polite society, last I checked.
Lady Doerr, of course. Let me explain.
It had better be a bloody good explanation. Go on.
There was an intruder in your house.
I'll say.
I believe they were here for Charlotte May. I believed you were in danger, so I came over to help.
And where is this so-called intruder now, Mr. Conway? I trust you tried to apprehend him.
Sadly, no.
So it's just you and your word, then? Your daughter's a police officer, Mr. Conway. You should have called her.
Well, I believed your danger to be too immediate, my lady. I was concerned for your safety.
You can cut that nonsense out right away.
So I've been here for over a year now, which is yay, yeah. Which is super weird to think about because I haven't actually met anyone in the studio in real life, not even once. I'm still working at my temporary base of operations because of COVID, and we're all obviously still working from home. So I haven't had a chance to even move to Manchester yet, which, you know, is where the studio is based. So yeah, I haven't really had a chance to meet anyone. And the closer it gets to us moving back in and working into the studio, the more I think how different it's going to be, the process of working, and sometimes not even better, right? It's just different. Like some aspects will be better, you know, audio quality, camera quality, stuff like this. Working next to each other, I think will just be a lot quicker, right?
Yeah, I think that's one thing I would say. Like the speed of things and how things will move along, get feedback between each other. That's the main thing that's gonna be quicker. It's gonna change, I think. It's gonna be weird going back. Been here for since March 2020. So, you know, coming up to a year and a half, just working from home, same four walls basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, it's really nice just to have a second animator with me, just to be able to bounce ideas off, to get feedback from that's more informed than you know, people on the team who don't animate, don't necessarily pick up on certain things or have the right suggestions to help me fix things that I'm struggling with. Yeah, so it's been really nice just to have another animator.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a much different dynamic to what you used to, right? When you go back into the studio, because I assume we'll be next to each other and we can just, you know, bounce ideas off without having to set up a Discord and you know, to organize all that. We'll be able to know and just look and see and do it on the fly.
We're already in each other's ears like 6 hours a day or something. Anyway.
That's true.
Over these last few weeks, we came from. Well, there was maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there was 6 of us, something like that, 6 or 7 of us, and now we're about 10. So I've gained about 3 or 4 people, and just that dynamic, having like almost double the team size in the same space, it's gonna be weird. Everyone's tables are gonna get moved around, or the feng shui is gonna have to change.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's exciting. I'm looking forward to it.